Hello, my name is Evonne Wildheart, and you are listening to the Temple of Nuit astrological reading for the Aries full moon here on the 17th of October 2024. I am recording this on the day of the full moon, and I'll just bring up the chart. So the full moon is happening, as I said, on the 17th, Thursday, the 17th of October, 2024. It is happening here, Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at 10:25 p.m. This chart actually says 9:25, which is pre-daylight savings time. So let's look at the chart. So we have this Aries full moon here at 24 degrees of Aries. Aries is the cardinal sign. It is the cardinal spark of initiation and get things moving. And it's like that point of, right, let's go. And, who's leading that charge? It's Aries, it's the ram, it's the one that just goes and sparks the initiation into the next thing. As you can see here, the sun is down here in Libra after the eclipse. So this is the first lunation that we had from the Pisces full moon eclipse, which was a month ago. The Libran new moon eclipse was 2 weeks ago down here on the South Node with Black Moon Lilith. And this is like, well, what now? What do we see now? There is things changing and movement, but there's something that came up in this eclipse period that we can no longer unsee. It's like once we see it, we see it. And now with this Aries full moon, it's like, well, what do we do now? How do we move forward now into something new without knowing the full story? Because if you remember Aries, it's the very start of the zodiac. We don't know the full story yet. It's still unfolding. So it's really stepping into something unknown. We just recorded the Sentient Sky podcast with Becky and I. We spoke about, this couple of months is very much, and I would say the next couple of years very feels like that the full card in the tarot of stepping out into the great unknown and into the great mystery. But we've got our backpack of tools and we've sort of learned a lot, especially with this Saturn still in in the last degrees in the last sign here in Pisces. That Saturn is an aging cycle. It's gone through the whole zodiac. So we have information here, but we don't know what to do next. Well, we're stepping forward into the unknown, but we don't know what's going to happen. But at least we have some very, hopefully, grounded tools that we have learnt over our journey. And especially after the eclipse period, things have come up, we've seen it, so what now? What now? What now? So this full moon is happening at 24 degrees. And it's really interesting. It's conjunct Chiron, the wounded healer. Now, this is really interesting because Chiron, it's the centaur. It's half man, half mythical beast, half horse. It's like Chiron is the wounded healer. So, what stories from the past that cause pain or soreness, that if we look back on it to really have a look in this full illumination of the full moon, because that's what the full moon is this true? Or am I carrying a mythological story or a mythos that we have been living with, but is it really true? Like, maybe up until now, especially before the eclipse, we've hung out to a certain narrative that we've been journeying with for who knows how long. And then the full, this eclipse period has brought some new information or something through that we can go, right. Well, no, actually, that's more the story. And there's a change in narrative in this full illumination of the full moon. And so what do we do with this story now? And Chiron here is to offer this healing. It's like, well, how can we move forward now, knowing we have all this new information of an old story that we've been traversing with, but how can we bring the healer element to it? And I think this is yes, it's bringing up stuff in this full illumination, but it's also calling us to be the healer. And especially because it's, we've got the North Node traveling here, there's an energy of, forward movement. What do we need to take with us? How do we move through this story now and with this extra new information, but for the future? It's not just for here and now, that's something for the future. And we've spoken about this many a times in the Temple of Nuit, that we're in a time of great change. Pluto moves sign, next month into a new 20-year cycle in Aquarius. um Neptune will move signs next year in this great journey that it's a 160-year cycle, Neptune. So it's beginning this initiation into Aries. Um, Uranus here will move into Gemini next year in a part of its 86-year cycle around the zodiac. So there's 80, 82, sorry. It's just a great time of what stories don't we want to take with us that are old stories. These outer planets, they move so slowly. And so there's a generational stories that we're carrying with us. But what part of these mythos, these stories, these Chiron wounding stories, especially with Pluto here in its last degree of Capricorn, now that it's going direct, it's reached its point, it's now on its way out, out of Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn since 2008. What stories do we want to leave behind in the Capricorn areas of your chart to transform and transmute, to bring something new through? So what is a new narrative that now we can see, even though we might not have the full picture, given this is an Aries full moon, but there is an element here that we can start to begin something new. But there's like pieces of gold that we're taking with us as a part of the toolkit to bring a story that you would prefer going forward with. So that is the healer element of the Chiron wounding healer. Right next to this full moon too, this little sign, I don't show this very often, this arrow pointing down. This is Eurus. Eurus is the goddess of discord. It's further out than Pluto, so it's super, super slow moving, but happened to be that this full moon is shining a full illumination to the goddess of discord. And in her sort of wounded self, it feels like she's an antagonist. She wasn't invited to the wedding of the goddesses, and she threw an apple into the goddesses and said, "For the fairest," and enjoyed the squabbling and that antagonistic sort of low vibrational element. But if you put her on the high vibrational element, when you lean into the positive aspects of Eurus, she is there to bring divine justice, but not just justice as in everyday justice, like, because she's so far out, it feels like generational justice, divine justice, this far out higher justice. Very similar to that Sagittarius view, but even bigger. And I'm just thinking of karma, but the thing is, what she loves is the chaos. She loves things being stirred up, like in very much a Pluto last degree Capricornian way, likes to stir the bottom up, to bring it up, to be able to see it, likes to, enjoys that stirring up. So, because she knows that from the stirring up, there's going to, everything is going to be seen. And so from here on end, I think throughout the month of the rest of October into November, there is actually no hiding anymore, especially, we've got, and it's interesting, we've got Black Moon Lilith here. That's all she was a gatekeeper of that South Node eclipse back in 2 weeks ago. Another dark feminine, the dark goddess element here as a gatekeeper of the South Node of the lunation back in 2 weeks ago in Libra, and now the opposite to that. And here you got the goddess of discord, another dark underworld figure, but stirring the pot up, let's look at it. Let's look at the injustice that is really here, that sits in the bottom of this well. We need to bring it up. We need to see it. We need to do it so we can move forward. And so this is why she does enjoy that chaotic, because she knows with the stirring up that from that we can now move forward because we can see what lays underneath. Until we can see that, we're not actually going to get the depth that we are being called to do. We're not going to be able to bring the depth of change that is really needed at this time, especially with Pluto and its last degrees of Capricorn. Now, this is, I keep coming back to this Pluto because it's significant. Here on this land, this Pluto is actually forming a trine to the ascendant. So this here, the Australian eastern seaboard of Australia, this is the energy that's rising. So Pluto here is like, come on, let's move it. Let's bring it up and see it for what it is. And there's some good gifts here that Pluto has offered to us as its time in Capricorn and now that it's moving forward. And the gifts will keep showing themselves over the next month and into next year as well, because sometimes the further away we get from a situation, the more we can see it. And that's like a sextile energy. So that's really interesting to note that. We also have at this full moon here Venus in her last degrees. This is really interesting. Venus, who has had her journey through the Pluto rules signs of Scorpio and Mars, she's gone to the depths. She's bringing up the gold. She's looking at the diamonds that, had to be uncovered from all the muck and all the, who knows what laid underneath all that energy down in the depths of the Scorpio's areas of your chart. But Venus is coming up and looking at it and just going, wow. And from there, she's showing Pluto. This is a sextile energy. This is a 60-degree angle between Venus and Pluto to say, well, this is a bit of a glimmer of hope from all the hard work that you've been doing, all the hard things that you've been looking at and uncovering and transmuting and transforming. Um, have a look at this, and which will help Pluto move forward in uncovering stuff. And moving through these final degrees and final degrees of any sign, this anaretic degree, this 29-degree mark, it can be really messy. It's like that thing if you haven't attended to, to the altar of whether it be Venus or, Pluto in this instance throughout its journey through each of the signs, it's going to be really irritated and really annoyed. It happens that, this is the law of nature. You can think of a Eurus, the higher law of universal rules, the cycles, the cyclical wisdom that if we haven't attended to something at the beginning, this is a classic Jane Hardwick Collin quote that whatever sets the tone at the beginning of the cycle, whatever happens at the beginning of the cycle sets the tone for the rest of the cycle, and it journeys through. And so if we haven't attended to these planets, whatever, when they're traveling through the sign, by the time they get to 29 degrees, it all comes up to things that we haven't looked at. So if we've been journeying Pluto and Capricorn, for example, and we haven't really looked at the things that we really need to look at, it's all going to come up in this point because it's the point of birth. It is the point of transition when everything is messy and you're moving through, and it's birthing, you're birthing, but what exactly, what is it that you have to let go of to birth the baby? What is it that you have to let go of to birth the next thing, that the new thing that's coming through? So this is when it shows up. And if you have attended to the altar of Pluto or Venus in Scorpio or whatever, at this point you might see the gold riches and the beauty that is here, perhaps. Maybe not. Maybe you finally get to see the full picture and you go, oh, that's it. But there is an element of, it feels like that seed that you've planted and you've planted in the wrong spot and you knew that you did and you tried to water it and it's growing, but it's not growing so well. but you know that and you're sort of ignoring it. But by the end of the harvest, by the time, everybody else is picking their fruit, you've got not much. And you're sort of in your pool of tears wondering, oh, I saw all of that. And so there's a reality that has to be faced at these 29-degree points as well. So it's really interesting that the ascendant of this chart is at 28 degrees. And then you got Uranus, in Taurus, which is ground shaking movement. It's not stable or surprising in the earth elements of your chart as well that you didn't expect coming up, at these last points. And although this is not a last point, it is in the final decan, this full moon of Aries, which is in Jupiter, which is called, you sort of, that Mars start as you move into Aries. It's like, let's go, it's on, and you move through and you put some sunshine in it. And then you get to these final degrees of Aries and you have to come out to have a look. Oh, right, this is actually what needs to happen next before you move into that Taurus element. But there's something here that's calling us to look at something that maybe it's not comfortable, but uh and to attend to it. So it's good to know than not to know, right? So that's really important here as well. There is an ongoing trine, so I'll just clear some of these pictures, that's happening between Jupiter, which is now in retrograde, um, and this Chiron and this full moon, actually. So this Jupiter going backwards, having a review of, the information. Gemini is mutable air. It is like, the information that we're being given, that we need to communicate, that we need to move. And, I'm thinking like of media and, having a look of where we give our expansive attention to. Are we stuck on our phones scrolling and getting caught in the scrolling loop? This is the time to start looking at some of these little things that we just go, is this for my health? Given that Chiron is the wounded healer, and what happens if I continue to do this as Jupiter moves forward, and then at some point in the next couple of years will be opposite to Chiron, which will be the full illumination of whatever's happening now. So the thing is about this full moon, it's just not here and now. This is an ongoing story, but it is a point of initiation and movement. As you can see, just by looking at all the angles, there's a square that's just happened between the sun and the sun, in Mars in Cancer, which is preparing for its opposition to Pluto, which will continue on into next year. So Mars is in its retrograde shadow. It will station retrograde early December and come back over this point. So whatever's happening now, there will be a review in the Cancer areas of your chart where Mars is. And it's a frustrated Mars. Mars can't really move easily sideways. Mars likes to action and get moving, but also with that frustration, it could become like, I'm just thinking of that crab who's trying to protect things all the time, or try and put out just fires because it can't really move the way it wants, but it's very protective of its home. And so, maybe there's something that comes up around, those area, that Cancer area of your chart, that, are you looking after your home? Now, this might present, for example, if you have Cancer in the first house, this might present as, are you looking after how you move through your body? So this reviewing of, health, and also a big theme of Cancer. I mean, Mars in Cancer in the first house is burnout, and having a look how much energy you give away to people, which is and how much do you hold for yourself and your physical body. So that's something to be aware of. Where in the Cancer areas of your chart, are you pushing forward or pushing action where that's going to come back and bite you? Crab claws on the ass because you haven't attended to that area that wants to move, but it's frustrated. Areas of your chart that could create problems later because it is in a shadow phase. and long-lasting problems because we do see out, this is here until April next year. Like that's a long time. It's like what, 5 months. So just tune into that. It saves a lot of problems later, I feel. Um, what else is happening? So yeah, that's forming a square as well. So remember this is a T square between the sun and the moon, Chiron, Mars here again, wounded healer, Mars in, excuse me, Mars in Cancer. What do we need to attend to prevent problems later? Feels like, what woundings, what soreness, what feelings do we need to attend to now? That if there's something niggly that's sort of niggling at you, whether it be health wise or you need to say something or that you're holding back on that you need to move forward on, attend to them now because later on, coming next year, it might be louder. So if you have a health issue, for example, and you're going, oh, that's just a shoulder, I'll be right. I'm just going to keep moving. Cancer, Mars in Cancer, can't really move very well. It will just sort of slog on and ooh, um, but still your shoulder's sore or whatever. If this is not attended to, if your soreness is not attended to, it will be bigger later. So have a look at what's arising in this full illumination of Aries and Libra. So and see just what's happening, what needs attending to, what can you release and let go, in the full illumination, and release and let go for the next month. That we're being guided here to make profound changes, especially in the Capricorn areas of your chart. We already know what they are, but this is the time. It's time to do this work. Yeah. I just wanted to highlight too down here. This is oh God. This is Juno. I think no, it is Juno. Sorry, I just lost my track there. So this is really interesting. This commitment to in Libra as well, which is next to the Sun. This commitment between you and I, and how do we do that together? This is also opposite, Uranus and and the Moon here. So it feels like this Juno here of commitment. How do you and I do relationship to each other? How do we commit to relationship to each other? With the sun warming this area here, but looking opposite, there might be some inequalities here that Eurus needs to have a look at to be able to dig up and say, actually, well, what actually is that between you and I? Is there some stuff that sits deep down below that needs to be have some divine justice brought into it, perhaps? So yeah, this is really interesting as well. There's something about divine justice and the full illumination of, the pains and hurts, but also the healing of how far you've come. So this might be a good time to just sit with, how far have you come since the beginning, since the last Aries lunation, which was back in with the eclipse, the new moon Aries eclipse back at in March, late March last year, before all the things started happening with that big sort of April that we had, um, the the quantum flip, I guess. What timeline are you choosing? Sort of moment in April and May. Have a look. What's changed since then? And have a look, bring it up in the full illumination. Look at all the good bits, look at the things that you've let go, look at the things that you've already worked through. This is great to celebrate that, because this is the setup for what's to come, that initiation again. Yeah, that's it. So just after this full moon, Venus will move into Sagittarius, which will feel nice. I think that's going to bring some relief in the next couple of days after this full moon, with Venus going through Sagittarius. But yeah, look, the whole of this month is just sort of it's a bit of a scramble. There's things going everywhere and left, right, and center, and it's for a purpose of stepping into that newness and initiation for something new. But before that, we need to do the uncomfortable bit and look at the old stories and the outdated, things that we are hanging on to, thinking of the crab in Aries, Mars and Aries, that we need to just let go and trust that it's for the divine higher good if we're feeling the call to let go of it. Wow. Okay. That's a lot under this Aries full moon. I'm sending you so much love. Go gently, and we'll see you at the Scorpio new moon coming up. In actual fact, I will be away, so I might do a post just after the Scorpio new moon or just before, and I'll send it out early. Anyway, I'll work it out. I'll see you around the Scorpio new moon. Blessings to you under this Aries full moon. Go gentle. Just move with intention. That Aries can move really fast, but we don't want to hurt ourselves, especially with that Chiron there. Much love. Go gentle, and we'll see you soon.